And Fiona's just joined us. Fiona, we're just first of all discussing, first of all, good morning, sorry, but we're discussing the current law under which home educators operate. Is that working and so on? So that's what Michelle has been explaining, because to my mind, currently what we have does actually allow for all these possibilities. Um, in terms of now, the big concern these days is safeguarding. And this is mainly the sledgehammer that they're using to kind of drive the nail in, is the safeguarding argument. Um, we will actually talk a bit later on about some of the figures regarding safeguarding concerns in home educated in children and so on. But up till now, all of the legal framework still allows for these cases where there are concerns to be reported, to be picked up, to be referred to the relevant agency. Is that not so? Yeah. So we I think for me the concern is, why are they changing something that actually works? And now I know one of the reasons. I'm going to just mute you, Fiona, because okay, that's all right. It's gone quieter now. Um, but one of the reasons is because some local authorities are complaining that they don't get to see the children, they don't get to do home visits and that kind of thing. So that's a whole other thing which we need to discuss as well. Um, is it really necessary to have these home visits and that kind of thing? But yeah, so I'm actually going to just quickly talk about that anyway. So one of the things we do see through these amendments, which we're going to discuss, is they're pushing home visits and seeing the child. Um, and there's this false idea. Have you got a cat or an animal near your laptop there, Fiona?
Yes.
Okay, because it's not very noisy. Is it snoring? um, because we see that so you've got these local authorities saying that they don't have any recourse. What do we do? But yet the current framework still allows for the local authority, if they have concerns, to go that step further and bring in safeguarding professionals, social services, and so on. Um, my feeling is that home education on the whole is nothing to see here. Everything is generally fine with most families. Most families, the parents are caring and loving, and they make sure their children have everything they need, including education. But in some cases where you do have potential concerns with families, we find actually that families were already known to services. There were people that were aware of the family. It's just they hadn't used the statutory sort of framework to take further action. Okay, so Fiona, thanks for joining us this morning. Michelle and I had started touching on the amendments, and I know you were shocked as well this week to see what's been added as an amendment, and these are government amendments, so the chances of them just going away is very slim. Am I right? Yeah.
Yes. So any amendments that are tabled by a government minister go through. So I would expect them to be discussed in the House of Lords on January the 21st and round about that time. And I think if you make time to sit and watch the debate, you might be very heartened by all sorts of objections to these amendments. But when it comes to the crunch, there'll be a 2 or 3 minute period where suddenly en bloc, all these government amendments will just get voted through. I mean, sorry to be
Yeah.
depressing,
Yeah.
but
It is depressing. Fiona, we've got a bit of a buzz on your audio, and I'm not sure why, because you're not using a microphone or anything. It's kind of like
so I tried to get in on my tablet,
yeah.
and it didn't work. So now I'm linked with you now on my phone.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. So
What I
it's
can
picking
try
up.
and do is I can try and restart my tablet and get in on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And now,
I'm just going to mute you for now because there's just a few little buzzy noises coming through. So I was wondering if you had a
okay.
cat that was snoring. That's what it sounds like, to be honest.
Oh, right. No, I do have a cat directly behind my screen who
Okay.
is like showing off and
I think we're hearing the cat. That's what I think we're hearing. That's kind of funny. But I'll just mute you for now while you try and get in on your tablet, if that's okay. So just unmute
okay.
yourself when you're ready. Okay, so Michelle, can we maybe work our way through these amendments one by one? So, obviously there are some positive amendments that some have put forward. So perhaps if we can just go through them briefly, touch on each one and say if it's a positive thing, negative thing, what the implications of those are. And then as soon as Fiona joins us, she can add to that conversation. Oh, you're muted, Michelle.
Hang on, let me get them up because I haven't actually got them up on
Yes,
the screen. Because obviously, if I'm going through them, then
I
obviously,
know, and I have so many tabs open, and then you're trying to. So at the moment, I'm also trying to monitor the Facebook and the YouTube, and keep an eye on comments, which is really difficult to do because they're
yeah,
hidden
there's
behind my.
been a few questions. And actually, I just wanted to address the one because I know one of the persons said about LAs going into schools seeing individual children. There are some LAs that actually do that. It started quite recently. I know Liverpool's one of the ones that does it. And actually, Liverpool LA introduced it because of the amount of children being excluded from school who should actually have been having support through HCPs and
Right,
SEND
right,
provision.
right.
So they introduced a bit of like if anyone's even potentially, they then go in and observe what's actually happening in the school and observe the child and that they're actually getting support or not.
And I think
And
that's not
they
a bad thing when it's something that's wanted by the parent. This is still coming
absolutely
down to
and actually
parental
it's meaning children
consent.
aren't getting excluded. It's a good idea. But no, it's just because someone actually, they put the comment LAs don't do that. It's like there aren't many that do, but some do go in and see the individual children. But that's obviously not in your home, that's in the school, which is a very different thing.
Okay, so the yeah, I've got them on a tab somewhere, but as I say, I'm trying to monitor a couple of, and every time if I close one thing, then I can't see the other thing that I was monitoring. So it's, um, I wish I had a more sophisticated setup, but we are just home educating mums at the end of the day. And nobody ever told us we'd need to do this. It wasn't in the, it wasn't in my home educating plan to be doing lives and everything. I mean, it's all very interesting and educational. So I had them open earlier, Michelle. I might be able to link to them in the chat if you're struggling to find them.
It's getting to the thing is it's getting to the right bits because I presume we're not going through all the 100+
No,
ones. We're
no,
just
no.
we're just
So
focusing on the
yes,
CNIS ones.
yeah. So let's because we're going to go to clause 31. Is that right?
Yes, that
Yes.
makes
So clause
sense.
31. Let me search that. Okay, clause 31. So that is uh on my page. It's like it's not telling me what page 51, I think. Um, so there we go. We've got Fiona coming in on the tablet. So I can, do you want me to stop? There we go. So Fiona is now back with us. Thank you, Fiona. That's better. It's not as noisy. And let's just check if we can hear you. Give us a little hello.
Okay, is that better now?
Yes. I should actually also have asked you, Fiona, just to give a quick, did you give an introduction of yourself? I can't remember if you did when you came. So just a quick intro. A lot of you will know Fiona Nicholson. She runs the it's a blog page, really, isn't it? Your Ed Yourself website. Yeah. So she's
Yeah.
gives
So I have a website called Ed Yourself, and I'm on Facebook and X, and I've been around for a long time, looking at what local authorities and national government are doing in relation to home education, and I take on some individual case work, particularly in relation to education otherwise than at school, and special educational needs tribunals.
Yeah, I've just seen somebody's put a comment about these amendments are added quickly while the public are distracted. And I think certainly in this case, they've sneakily put these amendments in right before report stage. I think in the hopes that perhaps it won't be picked up, that nobody will do anything about it. I don't know, but it just feels very considered to me that they've only been added now.
I think that was always going to happen. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been saying since the beginning, we're not going to see any significant changes really to anything until report stage in the Lords.
Yeah.
I mean, we've waited a long time to get to this point.
Yeah. And
now,
you've been observing
matters all at once.
Yeah, because you've been an observer of the parliamentary processes now for years, for a very long time, and so you have a good sense of how things happen behind the scenes that we're not aware of.
Possibly, yes. I mean, I was around when the government tried to change, when an earlier government tried to change the law before. They didn't succeed in 2009, 2010. And so I did learn on the job at that point. I had a lot of things explained to me which otherwise would have made no sense. And I guess, it has kind of stuck in my mind. So what I think is happening with these amendments at report is that there's a bit for everybody. I don't think anybody will be happy with any of it, but there are a few crumbs thrown out to various lobbying groups. That's how it looks to me.
Yeah, I think they do, and they also do this thing of trying to take it like this extreme step, and then so they actually get what they want. So even if they back down a bit, then we think we've won, but actually they still managed to get what they wanted in there. But there's quite a high percentage of these amendments are aimed at our home education clauses. I think it's like, what was it, like 30 out of how many, Michelle? You just unmute there.
It was 39 out of the 104 the other day. Obviously, there's been some more amendments since then, but they're not government ones. But yeah,
So
that
is more than a quarter. Yeah, more than a quarter of the amendments are aimed at just those home education clauses.
Yeah, and it's not just the quantity of them, although there are a great number of them, because you can have, a very small amendment that makes a huge difference, or you could have a great big, you could have a whole bunch of amendments with lots of wordage on it, but actually very little changes. So there is a lot going on with these amendments.
I do find it very hard to read them because you kind of have to read them next to the existing bill to kind of put the two bits together to make sense. And it's hard enough to read a bill as it is with the language that they use and the very long convoluted sentences and referrals back to this point and that point, and it's the cross-referencing. Louise has just
do on my website with each sort of like group of amendment to do a separate page for each kind of heading and say this is what it says and then this is what it will look like.
And Fiona's website's excellent for that, so I do recommend you go and have a look for the breakdown. I was just going to say, Louise has commented that she worked for governments previously and this is a strategic move. So Michelle, have you got those up in front of you? We can just go through them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can go through actually, all the amendments if you want, including the positive ones, just so people know what's happening. Okay, sorry, is that too much of an ask?
Well, no, because obviously with the way the amendments are worded, obviously from the amendments page, it's clause 31, page 55, line 2, insert.
No. It's
so
a
this is the thing. It's whether it will make sense, because obviously if it's whether it will make sense orally.
Yeah, the cross-referencing
that's the thing.
Challenging.
But obviously the first bit they've introduced is obviously they've extended the consent bit with regards to the section 47(8) of the Children Act 1989 consents. So it's now not just current, it's if it's at any period during the period of 5 years prior to the application. which brings lots of people into scope who wouldn't have been in scope.
Mm.
And I know particularly, I think one thing that we're really struggling to get across to, well, I know I've struggled to get across to peers, is the different reasons people can end up on child protection plans. And the fact that action from an investigation can be a child protection plan, but it may be a child in need, because it's not necessarily because there's a concern about the parent to the child, but that seems to be something they don't do anything of to address the actual nuances of the case by case in this.
Yeah.
So when I looked at that, by the time I looked at the amendment, I'd already seen, some explanations of what it was about. So the government policy notes do make specific reference to saying it's about a historic child protection plan over the last 5 years. But if you were just looking at the amendment, I don't think you'd twig that, because it refers to section 47 brackets 8, like taking action under 47.8, blah, blah, blah. So you actually need to know what that refers to and go and look up that somewhere else and go down 47, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 till you get to a thing about taking action. And even then, it still doesn't actually mention child protection plans. So it's all, it's all quite hard to decode, even if you've got, loads of tabs open and you've got an explanation of what it is. I think home educators are doing really well, actually, being onto this straight away and keeping up with it. I've seen multiple discussions in different places with, people are suddenly really gemmed up on like different bits of different acts. But we are running to catch up all the time.
Yeah, but I know the families who've contacted me concerned about this particularly are, well, there's been 3 big groups, but one group is where they removed their children from school because they were assaulted in the school and ended up on a child protection plan because police and everything had to be involved. So quite normal for a child protection plan to be involved. And they're like counting, going, hang on, but that still includes us, and my child's happy now, and it's really causing a lot of anxiety, because like, well, how do we differentiate? Why my child doesn't want to be forced back to school? How do we? And it's causing a lot of anxiety, because it's like, but it's never been because of me to my child, and now my right to support my child how they want to learn may be being curtailed, and it is causing a lot of worry.
Yes, and so the government isn't saying you won't be allowed to. They're deliberately not saying that you won't be allowed to. They're saying that the local authority, will have to, I'm paraphrasing, will have to take a closer look and decide in this particular case whether it's in the child's best interests. So you can imagine some, rose-tinted scenario where you have a conversation with a local authority person who says, of course it wasn't meant to apply to you. Naturally, we can see that this risk was not from the parent, and it wouldn't be exacerbated by the child spending more time with the parent at home. It's not meant to apply to you. Let's just, wave you on through to home education. I think that's how we'll be told it will apply.
You sound a little cynical, Fiona.
Well, also, on the other hand, you have local authorities who really want to cut down on the number of home educated children and who are scared stiff of something happening on their watch. So if they allowed a child to be home educated who had been on a child protection plan, and then afterwards something happened to that child, I think that's the scenario that local authorities are trying to preempt. I think they will be, even if they're not being, mean, I think they will be very overcautious. And so I'm very depressed by this amendment. I think I think it has the potential to be quite rubbish, actually.
Well, it's where it can be abused as well, and you're even if it's not abused, as you say, overcautious local authorities, because one of the big issues we have is we do not have consistent training either of local authorities across the country, so that everyone understands, the laws and the guidance correctly. Even currently, we have local authorities who are acting as if this bill has passed into law.
Yeah.
And I'm going to raise the story of Sarah Sharif at this point, because this is some of what they say is why they're doing this. Because Sarah Sharif, sadly, tragic story of a 10-year-old girl who was removed. If you look at it just the way that the government would like to paint it, was removed by a parent to be home educated, and there was abuse in the home, and she died as a result. Okay, so that's on the face of it. But when we look deeply into the case, they in fact did have laws. The laws that we have already were already being used in this child's life. She was known to services. She had appeared in family court before a judge who had put her back with her her father and stepmother. Father was known to have been violent because the mother fled the marriage there due to domestic violence. The school knew something was going on because they had observed bruises on the child's body. They tried to raise a concern about that. The child was then dressed in clothing that covered these bruises, even though nobody else in the family wore that sort of clothing. And the father tells the school he's taking her out to home educate. Now, if we stop at that point, should there have been concerns at that point? Was there enough information to go on for the local authority to say, hold on a minute, let's connect the dots here. The school had raised, when the school notified the local authority of the deregistration, that would have been the moment to say, we've been notified about this, but we have some concerns. At that point, the local authority could have taken that and said, because we have concerns, we and this child is known to social services, we're going to actually just double check this. We're not going to, we can send a home education officer or get a home education officer to contact them, but the child is also known to social services. Social services already have that door that is open to them to act. We know now also, is it Sarah, where the home education officer did do a home visit but went to the wrong house?
Yes, although the school had provided the fact that they'd moved and there was a new address, they attended the wrong address. And rather than then go out back to the correct address, because when they got back to the office, they discovered it's the wrong address, they decided they would reschedule it for some time later in the autumn. Unfortunately, this was it was crucial days.
Yes, yes.
But nothing in this bill can make any difference to someone going to the wrong address.
Exactly.
In her case, because I'd done FOIs long ago, that local authority for a long time has openly said they have a record, and in their welcoming letter tells you that they intend to come and do home visits. It's normal in that local authority, even if there isn't safeguarding concerns, to offer a home visit within a very short period of starting. Now, obviously, you can always go, yeah, don't want the home visit, but their welcoming letter offers a home visit off the bat.
Yes.
So that's normal procedure there. But you can't legislate for someone going to the wrong address and then not following up at the right address.
Yes, I think Fiona,
nothing in this will change that.
Yes, Fiona, you wanted to say something there?
Sorry, it was to pick up on Michelle's point about the local authority. Does have a policy of it came out in the case review paperwork of doing a home visit within 10 days. So because that was a routine thing, they weren't going around because they believed there was a problem. They weren't going around because they were worried. They should have been worried. Dots should have been joined up, but they weren't. So when they couldn't make their routine visit, it didn't, and it was the school holidays, it didn't seem any matter of great urgency at all. So it was dreadful, and it was a horrible, tragic coincidence that they went to the wrong address, because maybe that could have saved this one child. But the point for me is that there were so many safeguarding red flags while Sarah Sharif was still in school over so many years, and a great deal should have been done
before.
in the years preceding. But the fact that nothing was done meant that really nothing showed up at the point when she was taken out of school. And so it was a routine visit, which actually was kind of had no value, really. I believe that a local authority should look for red flags and see when they should be making every effort to see the child and the family. But in the absence of red flags, don't just say you'll go and see everybody, because that makes no kind of sense at all to me.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Fiona. I mean, we do also know that Surrey has been pulled up on a number of cases, number of failings of other children as well. They seem to be known for this, and are under scrutiny over it. But I think that personally, as you said, like, there were these red flags before, so now they've got this amendment, which is like, if you had Section 47 involvement, whatever, for in the last 5 years, then basically, that would, like, that kind of scuppers you. In this case, I'm trying to think of how do we find balance? How do we find balance? How do we suggest balance to counter this? Because so if instead
the
of
tick
looking
box
at
on the safeguarding return could put known safeguarding risks, big tick, so that the right information, they don't just go, oh, this is just a parent exercising the right. This is a parent that we already are concerned about, so we need extra eyes. So we don't then just.
So if the school was notifying the local authority that this parent is deregistering their child, and they're notifying the local authority, you're saying the school could have a box about,
most of the local authority ones, it's already on there.
I think
and has been for years.
Yes, because I think mine. I do think mine does. And so the thing of the red flags, if anyone's going to notice the red flags, it should be the school, because technically they have, as I keep saying, eyes on. And it's I feel it's disingenuous to kind of twist this and to use it as a sledgehammer to crack a nut in the cases of this bill and the amendments. As Louise said, this is like a gaslighting thing as well. And it is a very tragic case, but there are so many, as home educators, we are rightfully, I think, indignant, because we see, like, wait a minute, you've missed that. And this has been there have been a few cases over the years where there have been tragic outcomes, but in every case, and we're going to get Alison and Joe maybe to talk a bit about this later, but there have been all of these cases were known to somebody. Somebody had reported it, and the legal foundation existed already for somebody to do something about it, but they did not act on it. So I think that's what we're trying to say, is that invariably most of these families turn out to already be known to local authorities in some way. But okay, so yes, Fiona.
I would just say on that, though, that I don't disagree with you, but I think in my experience, there is just, trying to think how to describe it, there's just such a culture of indecision amongst local authorities.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody wants or feels able to be the person.
They don't like confrontation.
Decides anything important. They do want to have a tick box, and then they want it to be processed in a very tick box way. And so any solution that we propose that says, somebody should be considering the red flags, actually relies on an intelligent, experienced, safeguarding person to make those evaluations and then to be able to take decisive action. And I think that's the problem. In the absence of that, you end up with trying to institute a punitive system for everybody, just in the hope that, if everybody's in the net, then you'll have the people that you want in the net as well.
Well, we're expecting an awful lot of teachers as well, aren't we? Because we're expecting them to know what to look for, because they are the people that have contact with children. And very, very often they don't see, they don't, or they've got a lot of other things to do as well. They can't always know the nuances and the minutiae of every child's life. It's just not possible for them to do that. So there is a lot of expectation on them. Because we have to acknowledge that there are cases where children are really being very badly treated within their families. And this is what's used against the home education. So we have to address it. We can't ignore this as a potential, and just sort of
equally
away,
if the decision is that the family home is safe enough for the child and is safe enough for those parents to provide the care for their child, then that's the decision they've made. Now, if they need additional safeguards to ensure the parent can be a safe parent and good enough parent to the child, then they need to write those additional safeguarding mechanisms in, which they already can under existing law. So it's this sort of bit like, well, it's okay if we just give them a few hours of respite at school, but we know that the whole time they're worried about going home. Is that actually a better scenario? Because we either accept the parent can parent or we don't. And then home education is a parental decision. So if we're saying they're good enough to parent them, well, they're good enough to parent them. If we're saying they're good enough to parent them if they get this support in place, well, then we need to have the support available.
I think as well, it comes from the idea, I think the Sarah Sharif case has really distorted politicians' thinking, because in that case, if somebody had stepped over the threshold of that house, they would have seen something was up. But that's not usually, I would imagine, the case. So
no, it's definitely not from a lot of case review.
In that case, oh my goodness, just getting in there would have enabled us to rescue a child. Therefore, if we get in everywhere, potentially we can either rescue all children, or we can at least make parents think that, their nefarious doings will be spotted, so they'll stop it.
Yeah.
That's not how, dysfunctional, unsafe families operate.
Yeah.
The idea
well, I think the
walk in and spot it immediately is just
And I wanted to just add, and then we have the other side of it where a parent deregisters, and the school where they've never had any concerns before also refers to social services. Suddenly it's a concern where that child has been home for school holidays, been at home during lockdown and no concerns. And now suddenly the parent wants to home educate. So now we must let social services know because we see it as a risk all of a sudden. And so there's this kind of this contrast that we have of overreaction and possibly underreaction.
Yeah.
Yes.
But report after report consistently comes down to frontline services need proper funding and resourcing. We need better training for all the frontline services. And although every report always it ends up back on that feedback loop of we ended up with very junior staff because we just can't retain the staff. So junior staff end up in senior positions, which then mean they haven't got the experience within the team to help with those nuances of judgment. And then because we have no staff, they can't be released to go on the training they need to go on, so they can recognise the nuances of, actually, no, that's because that child has a certain disability, they're behaving that way. It's not because something is going on in the background. Or they may be saying that, but look at this, look at that. Is the reason they've got chocolate on their face actually because they've just eaten a load of chocolate bars, or is it to hide something and things like that? But each report constantly says we need to make sure everyone gets training. But rather than ensure the staff, who we're still going to get judging you, are trained properly, have enough staff in their team to actually do their job, have enough staff with experience to support them if they do find a really horrific case, they need experienced staff to get advice from, to process it themselves, to make good decision making. We go to, well, no, we'll parent blame instead. Extra eyes on the parent, extra eyes over there, rather than, no, let's do better. Let's ensure we have a secure frontline service that is robust enough to be able to support and recognise when there is an issue, which means we get good action.
Yeah, it is. I think it's just a really difficult thing to convey. Of you've got your politicians who some of them have very, very specific ideas about parents, very negative specific ideas about parents. And then you have your local authorities where you can get a mixed bag. Really, it just depends where you are. Some are very even-handed, some are really want to be supportive, some are very negative. And then you've got your schools also, where some schools are kind of sensible and others are, as I said, overreacting and reporting everyone to social services for home educating. And so how do we find a middle line? How do we find a reasonable line? And for me, this very much is about the current laws that we have. I feel are working. They maybe still go a bit further than I'd like, but I feel are working. But what we have the issue with is they've not been properly implemented by all the different people that need to be using them. We know that some local authorities actually do not even know the law around this, so they are working with home educators, but they actually have not been trained in the law and understanding the boundaries and limits of that role.
I feel we could
Sorry,
go down a rabbit hole forever with this.
Oh yes, we could.
Move on to another amendment.
Yes, but personally, I feel like if they could just be properly trained on what we currently have, in theory it should work. Everything is there. We don't actually need all this extra stuff. But shall we go back to the amendments then, Michelle?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's some sort of good comments in there of the things like, domestic abuse being very nuanced, and it's the proper training across the board that's needed
to recognise it. Yeah.
So it all comes down to resourcing those front lines properly, ensuring their training, whether it's social services or the home ed team or the children missing education team. If they were all trained properly and resourced properly, the system would probably be much better for most families. There'll always be the odd case where it doesn't work, but for most. So the next one we've got of hers, this is the horrible one. Clause 31, page 57, line 2, at the end, insert mandatory local authority meetings prior to withdrawal of a child from school. Did you want to take this one then, Fiona?
Hang on.
Is this the one that's part of the pilot scheme or not?
Is that the pilot?
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk about the pilot scheme. So the amendment is saying that they would like to see, I think, within
they need
the
to make regulations for the pilot. Yeah.
That they want to have a pilot scheme that will be run across 30 local authorities, which is a significant amount, to trial some of these more stringent requirements, like requiring a meeting with the school before deregistration and that kind of thing, which is what so many local authorities or so many schools are trying to, they are pushing for at the moment. So yes, it's a pilot scheme, but what we've seen in the past is, when some home educators will be asked for a home visit and they're like, yeah, sure, just come on in, and the home local authority is lovely, and then they set a precedent is set of expectations. So that local authority may then tell other parents, oh, well, other parents let us come visit and don't have an issue with it. And, and so then eventually you find more and more people just say, oh, well, we'll just have a home visit. Now, there's no reason you can't have a home visit. Nothing wrong with a home visit in the right circumstances. But the fact is that it's not required by law at the moment. But what happens is you find that the expectations change when one lot allow it, then it becomes expected after a while. So what I sort of see happening with this pilot study is like a backdoor sneaking in of these things. So it will kind of become acceptable within those city local authorities, but then you will find other local authorities doing copycat because, oh, well, it's probably coming in anyway, so we're going to do this. And then eventually it becomes the accepted thing by a sneaky backdoor approach. I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment?
Okay, so there are two different things here. So there's the mandatory meeting with the local authority, which is, as you said, the pilot scheme involving up to 30% of local authorities. And that is separate from considering where the child lives and requesting a visit to the home. So this meeting with the local authority, as I see it, could very well be a virtual meeting, and or it could take place, even if it were an in-person meeting, it could take place not in the family home. It's the mandatory meetings before starting home education for this pilot is separate from the home visit. The request for the home visit, that's like in another amendment. So just dealing with this mandatory meeting pilot, I think it's interesting that it's a meeting with the local authority and not a three-way meeting with the family and the local authority and the school, which is what I've seen a number of local authorities and schools try so far. I mean, it especially says that if it's that a representative from the school can only attend if the parent agrees. So it's about some kind of conversation with the family and the local authority before the child is taken off the roll. I don't think it's saying before the child is allowed to be taken off the roll, but that the meeting has to take place. I think you're right, Juliet, that once it normalizes the expectation of a meeting, and I think it also makes it more likely that there will be more meetings, bigger meetings, more frequent meetings once you've just got this idea of a meeting established.
My big concern. Oh, sorry.
E under this, they've got A, B, C, D, E. E says that the proprietor of a school must not allow the deletion from the school's register of the name of the child unless the proprietor receives notice from the local authority that the meeting has taken place in respect of the child. So I think
and yes, that it's been recorded.
Yeah, and whether the meeting was refused.
But it's not about the meeting. It's not about the meeting to decide whether it can approve the deregistration request. It's about the fact of the meeting having taken place, which is supposedly so that the local authority can give you lots of helpful information that you may wish to consider, and having considered it, you may wish to change your mind, pressuring you to change your mind, basically. But if they fail to get you to change your mind, then it's making deregistration conditional on the meeting taking place, rather than saying you have to satisfy them and give the right answers at a meeting before you're allowed to deregister. Of course, we can easily see it morph into that.
Yeah.
But at present,
I would like added to it a couple of timeframes. I would like that they must offer the meeting within a tiny time frame, because at the moment it doesn't give a time frame for the local authority to offer the meeting that the parent must attend and participate, which, yeah, it can be virtual, or there's nothing that says it has to be in person. So that worries me. And then again, there's nothing in a time frame for how long they have to communicate that decision that it's all occurred. And my worry is, obviously, if they lengthen the time it takes till you get your meeting, and then we take a few more weeks to inform the school and things like that, actually for some children that could be quite a considerable concern, because they could pull it out. So I hope a peer will tighten that up with a bit of time frames in there.
I think we might not see that getting nailed down until regulations.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they want that pilot scheme to be no less than 2 years, so that's a very easy slide in to me. That's like, oh, within 2 years time you've got a whole new generation potentially of home educators who are now, where this is now something they're used to and not questioning. Because we have seen that already happen, where as you get different sort of cohorts of home educators, different groupings coming through, that of what those particular individuals will and won't sort of allow, or until they find out what the actual rights are, while they, so I can very much see the lines being blurred on this by the time you've got it, this pilot scheme's run for 2 years.
Yeah. I do worry, though, again, when we're talking about trust of parents, like we did earlier, of some of the things that the local authority must ensure are discussed, because there's the duty of your parent under Section 7, and then the parent, obviously, we know that sometimes you need to explore how education will work for your child to find the right fit. But this is before that bit. They're going to tell you your duty, and the parent needs to explain how they plan to meet that duty, which at that point you may not have a big framework, which will work with some LAs who understand there's that process of assessing what is and what isn't right. You're still having full-time education. There's just an assessment process, like when you change to a different school. There's a settling in bit where you adapt and find the right class. The support duty, you'd expect them to tell you what's going on, not that they've really said there's going to be any support, but also is that the parents' reasons for considering. So they're still not accepting that you've made a decision. It's your reasons. Why are you considering it that? And then they want you to discuss the support needs that your child may have and how these needs could be met. Now, I'm wondering if the thinking behind that is there are some parents who do feel forced into home education, that maybe there as much as I don't want to say, maybe there is a thought process that's assessed that is good here, that maybe they are sort of thinking, maybe because the school's not involved in this meeting, maybe there is that bit to try and understand, hang on, what is going on. But then what worries me is that they also include the next bit they must discuss is the safeguarding and welfare of the child, which it's again putting like oversight over the parent, as opposed to you are making the best decision for your child, as a parent normally does their best to do. So it worries me about them doing, because it's not just safeguarding, it's safeguarding and welfare of the child, and obviously that's a much wider remit. And this is before you get your child off the roll, so it does sound like a lot is being packed in. The other thing I'd like added, but as Fiona said, it wouldn't come till the regulations bit, I would want something in there that guarantees you as a parent the right to have a supporter attend with you at the meeting, because at the moment that's not there. And I know I've sat in meetings with parents where they've been strong-armed because 4 people turn up from the other side and blah, 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 blah. So my concern there is that there's no sort of guarantee that you can have that support there. So I would want something like that written into the regulations.
Well, I think this is my concern also, is just that, there's no protective things written in. So, good legislation should have some things which protect the different parties to, the different stakeholders. And there's not really anything offered like, so if you've got a rogue local authority that's just, decides that the law means something different and behaving, in not in the spirit of it, as maybe some of our government ministers think the spirit of it is, what protection, what recourse do families have?
I think
So
it's significant that it's a pilot scheme, because that will mean local authorities putting themselves forward. So My fear would be that the local authorities that volunteer themselves are the ones who do want to use it to put families off, to make families feel that they will be accountable every second for everything, that it will just be, they'll be entering a world of pain if they continue home educating, to be offered it's effectively false promises about help sorting things out at school, which can't materialize. And yeah, basically that the local authorities who enter into this pilot will have as their objective reducing the numbers of like new families going into home education. And I'm not saying this is what the mandatory meeting has been put in for. I think, we've all said there could be good reasons to have a meeting, but in the wrong hands and for the wrong reasons, it could be very negative.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the issue. So we don't get that recognition that there are some local authorities that are bad players.
My other big concern is that they've added that the child must attend the meeting unless exceptional circumstances apply. Now, exceptional circumstances can be quite a high threshold, and there's no sort of age appropriate bit there, because you might be deregistering your 5-year-old, or your 6-year-old, or your 7-year-old. Equally, you may be deregistering your 14-year-old who has been bullied to a point that they're traumatized, and actually sitting through a meeting discussing all these things is just doesn't feel appropriate. I do believe there should be the option they could attend if they felt they wanted to, but the fact that there's an expectation that they must attend unless there's exceptional circumstances, that worries me, because the extra pressure on the child in that meeting when their parents have been told you must do this, you must do that, this is your responsibilities, this is okay, well, what are your child's needs? And I know certainly, well, even if I talk of my own child, he would be horrified to sit there while I discuss his needs, because that's quite personal to him. But equally, he's supported to be able to do things to his best. He doesn't want to sit in a room listening about his deficits, and would find that quite horrible.
Yes, and if I'm coming at this as well from a background in, say, special educational needs tribunals, where at a point, at an appropriate age, there is an option for the child to attend the tribunal. And in every case that I've been involved with, it's been a few minutes at the beginning or the end where the judge and the panel are really respectful, really interested, really grateful that the young person has turned up, really solicitous. You're not putting them on the spot. Maybe like I've had quite good experiences, but it's just been like, like, it's great to see you. Basically, I hope things will work out for you. I don't see this mandatory meeting pilot panning out that way at all. I think it will become, unfortunately, about the voice of the child. So not only do they have to attend and hear all this stuff about themselves, but they will be asked questions, because I don't think a local authority would pass up the opportunity to say, you want to be home educated? Are you happy that, are you confident that you're
unfortunately, it's still going to be down to those
parents can
local
teach you properly, so that you're able to get, etc.
I think that that it's we know already that some local authorities cannot sort of almost help themselves from having that mindset, or having it's some bias in terms of home education and the reasons why people are home educating, or bias against parents. And I think you are right. And it is, we've got a lot of cause to be concerned if this is accepted. And it is very worrying indeed. I want to move on, Michelle, now to clause 32, page 58, line 12, Baroness Smith's amendment, which is on page 56, I think. You got it? Before the end of the period of, she wants to insert, before the end of the period of 15 days, beginning with the day on which the local authority registers a child under the section, the local authority, A, must consider where the child lives, and B, may request the child's parent to allow the local authority to visit the child inside of any of the homes in which the child lives. If this request is refused, the local authority must consider that to be a relevant factor in determining whether to serve a preliminary notice. That's a huge escalation. That's not even giving the parent really a chance to show what they're doing or write a report, whatever. And then before the end of the period, okay, so they must also consider settings where the child is being educated. So this could be other activities that the child is doing. So, I mean, that we also know that this one, it says the local authority must consider where the child lives. So that must is quite an important word. And then the B is they may request the child's parent to allow the local authority to visit the child. But I can almost certainly guarantee that the may will also turn into will we must kind of approach from a local authority. What are your thoughts?
So they brought this forwards because they had these measures later in the school attendance order process in the Wellbeing Bill. If they already had reason to start the process, then during the process, they would consider where the child lived and could make this request to visit the home. This new amendment is saying, just do that anyway. Just do all that anyway for everybody, before you have any reason to think that there might be a problem. And let's just like sort of shake it out and see what happens. And again, I do think it's about reducing the numbers, because I think for me the significant point is that if the parent refuses the meeting, then it's escalated.
And this is so far removed from what we've had in the past. I mean, this is a huge amendment that she's proposing here, and I don't understand it, if I'm honest, because I don't believe that there's any real evidence to support a need for it. We're getting some comments on this where that who decides what exceptional circumstances are. Children that would be traumatized by attending a meeting with the local authority. If a child has selective mutism, which is caused by high anxiety, how would they handle that meeting? Just feeling overwhelmed, and also possibly if they know how much is riding on it, and some children have had such a negative experience at school, they'd be absolutely so fearful of going back as well. So yeah, I have a lot of concerns. Michelle, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I know, Judith, that I have a child that will not allow strangers in the house, full stop. So no one's coming in ours. And I also, through some of the stuff I do with Sen and stuff, know a lot of children where the child's choice would be they don't want someone coming to their house. So, it's not about the parent or thing. People are entitled to a safe space.
Yes.
And we've always been allowed our castle in this country, unless we do something wrong. But this sort of literally tips that over there. Where is your private family space? Because this isn't about we have a concern. This isn't about if you respond in a certain way. This is just about you happen to choose a different way to educate your child to what the majority of the country choose to use. And that's enough to now mean that they can come in to where they live. And so it's very, very intrusive, because there's no consent there. It's just, yeah, well, we need to consider where they live. And if you think there are children who are in temporary accommodation who already struggle, so the local authority may have stuck them in one room for the whole family, and now they're going to come in and consider it and go, oh, it's too crowded, too busy, you haven't got room to do anything. But it's not actually the family's fault, and they are trapped because of this, because that will then be considered, and they will come up with they will forget you could go to the library to learn, they forget you go to the park, they forget that there's groups and things like that. And at the moment you can keep that separate because you you don't have to, but this then is just so much more intrusive, and it will be disproportionately affecting the families who already are struggling in another way, but may not be struggling around ensuring their child has a suitable education, but they may have other struggles in the background, whether it be their child's own needs, whether a member of the family's disabled. A member of the family may need a commode. Do they really want someone coming in and seeing their commode in the living room? The child may be embarrassed for others to know their relative has that. This is it's really, really intrusive, and it's not based on harm, and it just seems it's just too far. It just seems really, really too far.
Well, there's a big focus on equality, diversity, and inclusivity these days, but we still find that discrimination happens. Even with this focus, there people might have an unconscious prejudice towards certain areas of the city, certain streets, certain faith groups. They may jump to conclusions because not everyone knows how to ask the right questions. Not every local authority is trained in how to well, we know they're not. We know they're not trained to recognize where there's actually a concern.
I've supported a number of families in and around London who, because of housing constraints, just live in very small flats, and who have always been concerned about their local authority wanting to do home visits, because they assume that they will be judged negatively for having cramped living accommodation. Even if you don't go right up to the scenario of everybody living in one room, you can be in a very cramped isn't a separate isn't necessary.
Yeah,
because not only do some children absolutely hate that and wouldn't use it even if you provided it for them, but also there are many ways to get around the fact of not having a quiet separate study area. But if you are visited by somebody with a mindset which says that's what's required,
yeah,
then it's a stick, isn't it?
You are breaking up a little bit, Fiona. It's just a little difficult sometimes. No, it's not your fault. It's just the internet, really. So Louise has made a helpful comment saying, if the lens of judgment is dirty, clean the lens. And I think that is very true. And if you think of also people in the traveling community as well, who have specific norms and customs, are they going to then be judged on those? And there are many communities that do things a little differently, but ultimately it is really the focus should be, is the child happy and thriving? Although I would argue some children who are fresh out of a if they've got school-based trauma, they might take them a while to be happy and thriving. So you're not going to pick that up right in 15 days. They need you need a bit more time. And if a child moved schools, say for instance you moved cities, nobody comes to say, well, let's see how the child's doing in this school within 15 days, and if they're not, maybe we need to help the family move back to where the child was happy. Nobody's doing that.
Don't give them ideas, Juliet. Don't give them ideas. They could still add the amendment. They've got a few days.
But you know what I mean? You expect the 15 days is within 15 days, a very early time as well. Like, because a lot
It's
of
a
families are still
tiny time.
progressing
It's a
back,
tiny time frame for, just
Yeah.
even just basic processing. 15 days is tiny.
And so basically what it boils down to, though, that meeting within 15 days is to judge you as a parent whether they think you can do the job.
Then they don't have to get around within 15 days. They have to do their considering. I know this is technology,
Okay.
but they have to do their considering within 15 days. And then they make the request. So actually, the meeting could be hanging over you for some time. You're in limbo.
Yeah.
You could be wanting just on your postcode.
Yes.
To begin with.
Yes. Yes. And, you've got children with disabilities, as one of our commenters has said, they may not look happy or like they are thriving against other children, it's highly subjective. And I do think you will find it is going to be a judgment of parents. So we go back to almost like the parent blaming way of doing things, where the parent is now under the microscope, regardless of whether that situation is good for that child or not. And as I often say, is that if the child was really struggling in school, if they were unhappy in school, even if the home is not perfect, the chances of the child is still going to be better off than going back to that environment where they are overly anxious or selectively mute, or not engaging, dying inside, whatever the issues may be for that child. Is that, how do you then measure, is anyone going and looking at what's happening with that child in school to, as a comparison? They're not, because as far as they're concerned, if the child is in the building, it's a suitable education. Doesn't matter whether it is or not. So they must just be in the building. So there's just so much of a double standard, I think, in terms of that sort of judgment of what is good for a specific
I also think
child.
we should consider those children who never went to school. So if you think when your child reaches compulsory school age, they will be eligible to go on the register. So this is something that you're 15 days after your child becomes compulsory school age of the consideration of. So your child may never have experienced school, and they can be doing this judgment really, really early on, really early doors.
Yes.
Also, all the families, all the tens of thousands of families who are already home educating, who are not on the children, not in school register because it doesn't exist yet, who go onto the register, and then within 15 days, it will apply to all of those as well. It's not simply, families who are new to home education when this new law comes in, whose children are in school right now, but who think about deregistering at some point in the future. It's literally 100 and whatever it is, 17,000 children on day one of this law coming into force.
Well, the local authorities are going to have fun fitting in those.
I can't picture it at all. That's what makes me think it's to do with reducing the numbers. You offer the visit on the basis that many will be refused, because that's local authorities' experience of offering home visits, and then you can use the refusal as a way, as a lever to get the child into school or back into school.
Yeah, well, we've got this example this week of the Barnsley Council, who are actively trying to reduce the number of home educators. Now, to me, that's totally the wrong approach, because it shouldn't be about it's got to be down to the child. It can't be down to like, oh, we just don't like that there's too many, so we need to bring it down. So which ones are you going to pick to send back to school? Who picks that?
But equally, when you look at their figures, they're not particularly bad at issuing Section 4371s. So it's not an area where you can look at the figures and think, oh, in their opinion, they have thought that there's a lot of people who are not doing suitable education. Because I know we did look and we're like, they're not even one of the particularly bad ones for issuing SAOs. So it's not even like they can say their own evidence shows, well, actually, in our area, we have got a particular problem that we do think there appears to be lots of people without suitable education. It does seem to be, we've picked a number, right? Who's going to be for the chop? Who are we going to stop home educating?
Yeah, that's like culling penguins, it's like, anyway, maybe not the best example, but you know what I mean? It's like, but who makes that decision? And if you're the unfortunate parent that, falls under that, I did share an article this week with so one of my contacts from Northamptonshire, she shared an article from the Northampton Chronicle. I'm just getting it up so I can have a look here, where in West Northamptonshire is rapidly emerging as one of the country's fastest growing hotspots for elective home education. Just okay, basically that's the figures, a sharp rise in across England, but in West Northamptonshire. And they talk about the driven pressures on SEND provision, they talk about the reasons. But my best part about this article is they got a quote from one of the councillors. And he actually he gave a very simple answer. He said, the authority, let me pop up, sorry. The authority had expanded its support in response. He said, we have a dedicated team of officers as part of the school attendance support service who are responsible for delivering statutory duties around electively home educated pupils. This includes explaining the process to families, offering home visits, checking the home education plans, blah, 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 But what I like, there's no drama. He just said, oh, we just expanded the team in response. No biggie. And I really like that because we so rarely get that kind of response. So often the councillors are like in Barnsley, oh, well, we need to reduce that by whatever percent. So, it's nice when you see a more measured response like this from the West Northamptonshire councillor. So that's what I'd like to see. I would like to see just, the local authority are supposed to be there to support. They are employed by using our taxes. They are meant to be there to serve. And yes, they are serving children in the sense of if children are at risk of harm, to recognize and to act to protect those children. So they are then serving those children where perhaps the children do not have anyone else looking out for them. But that's where the balance has to be. There can't be an assumption that every parent is potentially, like we can predict, that this parent's going to be bad for their kid. It's like you can't do that. You can't have that approach. And but so this is why it's really worrying, is the fact that the government thinks this is a sensible approach. I don't get it at all.
I think the issue is at the moment there isn't a statutory duty really to do anything with home education specifically. The duty is
Yes.
If there appears to be a problem, and I think there's a sort of fantasy amongst some local authorities that new laws with new duties and new powers will bring a shed load of new money, and I don't think that's what will happen. I don't see how this financially could make sense, except to bang the same drum again if it's used with a single-minded focus of getting numbers down.
Yeah. And I was going to say something, now my thought's gone. So Michelle, if you've got a thought, go for it.
No, I just wanted to ask Fiona's opinion on sort of still in the same amendment bits, how if she's reading it the same way I'm reading it, the bit where it goes on to the local authority must consider the settings where the child is being educated that the local authority knows about. Do we think that's going as far as they think they're going to turn up at settings that they know about, or do we think that it's just a case of when they look at it, oh, okay, that looks like a nice mixture of things the child's going to? What do you think that's, how's it feeling to you? To me, it's giving the wrong vibes, but.
Well, they've already said in the small print before, further on in the school attendance order process in the Wellbeing Bill about considering the settings, and questions were raised about whether that meant that they would have a right to demand to go and have a look. And the government were clear that they wouldn't be able to do that. That's why they've said consider the settings, which is, it's a sort of weird formulation. It's a weird way to express it because of all the things that you can't say. So, and that's why it's hard to get a picture of like what it actually means. I don't have a picture of how it might work. I don't know if the government has a picture of how it might work. I think it's
that wishy-washy wording that it will come out in the wash later.
Yes, and also I don't see how it sits with all this other stuff about providers being within scope, you know, the ones that where you have to say which we'll get onto, which providers you're using and what proportion of education they deliver, you know. So like, is a provider a setting or is a setting a provider? I think they're tinkering around with different bits of it and they've not joined it up in their head yet, to be honest. I think that's why we're like, you know, puzzled by it.
It just seemed really odd wording.
Yes.
I just want to go back to where my thought that I lost earlier, and that is that, like, we were talking about local authorities, and with this legislation, I felt that with the legislation as it is right now, some of the local authorities find it inconvenient to have to abide by the law, to have to, you know, to not be able to insist on things, certain things like home visits and meetings with the school. They find it inconvenient because it's maybe not, like, they maybe don't have enough boxes to tick. Maybe they need a few more. I don't know. Because recording is everything. It doesn't really matter if anything happens because of you recording, but you must record it. And so I sort of feel like that's where we're coming from, is that local authorities are like, oh, heck, I have to actually respect the parents' rights. I can't just go in, you know. So to me, I feel like that's some of what's fed this, and actually it's not really good enough, because you know, we've got your human rights, is it Article 8 of the Convention on Human Rights, which is your right to privacy of your home and your correspondence and family life. That is definitely, you know, eroded in these amendments. And it's also in terms of the balance this country's always held between parent and state, and the state not getting involved unless there's actual reason, unless there's actually, you know, you've got cause for concern, you've got a threshold where you're concerned about the risk of harm, you know, which also comes to the sharing of data, of course, is like, so who decides when a child is at risk of significant harm? And they're lowering that threshold through this bill so it's no longer about the child being at risk of significant harm, or any individual for that matter. It's about promoting the welfare of. So they can share information simply because they deem it to be promoting the welfare of the child. So whatever that means. So it's suitably vague when it comes to their side of things, but not so vague when it comes to our side of things and the requirements and the requirements for the register and so on. But let's move on then to the next, let's see. So we come to clause 32, content and additional information in registers, so 436C. Have you got that in front of you?
Oh, if I missed that, because I was looking at the addresses, the previous addresses, if they're under 12 months. I missed one out.
I don't know. I'm not sure where
on
that
my
comes
website
in.
as Government Amendments, the Lords Report 3. Is this the one you mean? Reduced reporting burdens for the register. Changes to page 58 and
yeah, so that's where I am. I think is that So we've done the considering where the child lives and any homes, and
Sorry, scroll
the settings and the settings. I don't know where the previous addresses thing is, to be honest.
Just
But then,
one quick, it's a
yeah,
quick one. And
yeah.
it literally just is that if, you know, so if you if you haven't lived at the current address at the point of now, they need the last 12 months of addresses.
Yes, that's actually still
Um,
coming. That's still coming. So that's still coming. So the one we're on, which is the content of an additional information in registers. So they've now changed it. What are the changes here? The child's name, date, birth, and home address. The names and the home addresses of the parents or parents. So if there's different addresses. Primary type of education received by the child. Regulations
I could
under
talk to this one if you want.
So have they taken some of that information off that was the requirements for the information for the registers?
Yes, it's about saying that they've listened to parents. So previously they had a long list of what parents would have to provide and for the register, and the trouble they'd get into if they didn't provide it, and also that they would have to give updates within 15 days of any changes. And the amendments, the combination of the amendments that are being proposed, is designed to, like, yeah, make that easier, quicker, less of a burden. So you still have to do the ABC, which is child's name, date of birth, and home address, name and home address of each parent of the child, and the name of each parent who's providing education to that child. But everything other than that is now made kind of more streamlined, more approximate, and you don't have to keep supplying the information yourself. You wait to be asked, and the local authority can't ask you more than once every 3 months.
So that's a tiny little glimmer of light in amongst all of these other ones that we've discussed, which it's a tiny improvement.
Oh yes, and sorry, and there is a specific thing as well about providers, which I know a lot of parents were very worried about, that they would have to mention every single human being that was supplying any form of educational input to their child. They're proposing to change that to say it's a provider for more than the prescribed amount of time.
Okay, so we're probably coming to that still then, are we?
Oh, sorry, I was because I put it all on.
Yes, you've linked them up. So you've linked them up, which is fine because I'm just sort of, because it's not mentioned in this particular bit. That's what I'm
Oh, right,
asking,
okay.
yeah. So and it also says the local authority can still request further information in a particular case where they have reasonable cause to believe that a child may not be receiving a suitable education, or that the child's welfare may be at risk. So that's a little bit more measured. And then the next,
softening it, yeah.
Slightly, yeah, and I think a lot of parents will be very relieved to hear about that, but not so much about the other bits. So the other bit that Michelle mentioned, clause 32, page 58, line 16, they want to insert, if the child has lived at their current address for less than 12 months, they want their previous address. So they want to be able to, like a bit like your credit score and so on, they want to know where you've been before, so they can go and look up that information and possibly ask other local authorities about you.
And not go to the wrong place.
One hopes that they don't get the wrong address, yeah. Well, if it's a serious matter, we'll put it that way. And then they have to include any other additional address, but that came in previously as well. So if the child is living between parents or grandparents or something. Okay, so there's an amendment to provide an estimate of the overall amount of time rather than the actual amount of time, because we have a problem with some local authorities in terms of demanding to know how much time children spend being educated. which in reality, as a home educator, you tend to be kind of like educating like all the time. It's just part of your daily lifestyle that, and you regard everything as education. Nothing is absent from a learning experience. So I know that some parents have difficulty answering that one, and I think the current guidance, it's not really like a requirement to say how much time you spend, um, set hours and so on. But it's still it's a concept they don't grasp, of the fact that actually some children are learning like all the time. They just don't know it. It just doesn't look like sitting at a desk with a book in front of you.
They've made this amendment makes it less unreasonable. It's a bit
Yeah.
closer
Yeah.
to how home education would actually work, that it would be an estimate of the
Yes.
time.
But
And also, not having to explain every 5 minutes if anything changes.
Yeah, it's a little sop that we're being offered there, just to kind
Yeah.
of help us swallow the rest of the medicine. Okay, then let's see what else we've got. Okay, here they come to the other providers. So they want to this is if a particular provider other than a child's parent is providing education to a child for more than a prescribed amount of time, as Fiona said, they want the name and address and a description of the type of provider. And we would have to hope that they say a reasonable amount of time, because we know that, if a child is going somewhere for an hour, hour and a half once a week, um, that I don't know, I don't feel it's like really relevant. I think the concern should be more, and I think this links to concerns around your unregistered schools, your illegal schools. I think that's the little driver behind this one, is they want where somebody else is actually providing the bulk of that child's education in potentially an unsuitable setting. But they don't want to say that.
It is
Because it
actually
could
a really
impact
big
faith groups.
change to add this bit about for more than the prescribed amount of time, because up till now, the bill has been saying basically to parents, tell us every single person and every single place, and then the local authority will work out the ones where they need to go and ask those providers for more information. Whereas this change now is saying that the parent only has to divulge the information about providers who are delivering for more than the prescribed amount of time. Obviously, we still don't know what that amount of time is, and that's going to be sorted out later in secondary legislation. But it's much less. It's far fewer people, much less that the parent has to write down.
Yeah, yeah.
And update the local authority with.
Yeah, it's a little helpful. But I still wish they wouldn't kind of try and catch everyone in a net that's actually intended only for a specific,
It's
percentage.
less rubbish than it was before.
Yeah. It's whether it's whether the trade-off is going to be worth it or not. Okay, then they also say change that to an estimate of the total time rather than the actual time in terms of that provision. So all of those bits about time, they seem to have changed it where it's an estimate of the time, so you don't get an exact time. Okay, so there's a bit. Okay, I think some of these other little bits are not terrible. I'd have to analyze them, because there's a little bit about leave out within the further education sector, that they wouldn't need to include information. Oh, sorry. So, wait, no. It says this amendment would ensure that the register of children not in school would be required to contain information about all schools or institutions that a child attends or has attended in the past, including those which are institutions not in the further education sector. So it's just leaving out a bit. So now it's all of them. And the next amendment, which is clause 32, page 60, line 3. Insert whether the local authority exercise any of its functions under section 436B, 8, 9, or 10, or 436 H, 7A, 7B, or whatever, in relation to the child and the outcomes of any consideration of home and education settings or home visits conducted under those provisions. I'm not quite sure where that fits in. I don't know, Fiona, you may have a better idea where that fits in.
Okay, so if you're taking it the order in which the amendments appear, they're doing the amendments to each clause.
Yes.
So that leaps out of the sequence, and also
Yes.
the sequence of the pages. So that one is just like looping back to the previous thing we discussed about the home visits and the contents of the register, and then the local authority will write up about the visit.
Yes, this is going back to the what may be included in the register, information that may be included. Yeah. Okay. I don't like the wording. It really just messes with my brain a bit. Okay. We've got a bit about young carers. Are there any coming up after that we need to highlight?
Okay, so the rest of the completion of the reduced information is the amendments about only having to inform the local authority and request if there've been any changes.
Okay.
That the request can't be made more than once every 3 months.
Okay. I think that is helpful, but local authorities should never have been asking every 3 months anyway. But certainly I don't know if parents get told when their children are in school of changes to the curriculum and so on every 3 months.
No, it's not the curriculum, it's to providers.
No. Yes, but
providers. So with the bill to date, parents would have had to tell the local authority every single person that was involved with the education of their child.
Within
and if
15
those
days, wasn't
people
it?
changed, they would have had to update the local authority within 15 days. The new amendments are saying you don't have to tell us about nearly as many providers.
Yeah.
And then once you have told us, you don't have to tell us again if there are any changes until we ask you.
Okay, so and they can't do it more than
changes to providers more than once every 3 months.
Yeah, so that's an improvement, right?
It is an improvement. It's less rubbish.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Any others you want to highlight? Any other ones that we I'm just, are there any further other amendments that we need to highlight as being particularly that we need to be aware of?
Oh, well, so far we've only done, I think, amendments to clauses 31 and 32.
Yes. I'm still scrolling. I just don't want to necessarily dredge through all the tiny ones. Are there any, which ones should we hop to next? Which ones have got some significant changes? Because there's lots of little nuanced changes that I'm also trying to scroll through, and they have like insert living in England or Wales, and so sometimes it is just that it's
one
not
about
really going to change things for us.
The regulations. Have we done that one yet?
I don't know if we have.
No, we haven't.
I just want to quickly I'm going to pull out this one, which is clause 32, page 64, line 36, where information about GCS exams should be added to the list of examples of matters about which a local authority can provide information if it is requested by the parent. So that's something they've inserted, although to me it's pretty, yes, there may be some parents who need that information, but by and large, home educators go and speak to other home educators and get that information.
However, I'm over the moon for that being added in, because there may be some of the EOTUS children won't miss their exams because LAs don't realise there are deadlines to register their EOTAS children on. So from not a home education perspective, it means at least LAs will have to actually get some knowledge on it if they haven't yet, which might mean other children might get their exams, which currently sometimes they literally don't get their exams because their caseworker doesn't know that you must register before a date for the
Although
exam to
Fiona's
happen.
shaking her head. Fiona's shaking her head. What do you say?
Touchingly optimistic, Michelle. It would be
I have to take the optimism from it. It's like
it would be a list to exam boards, including exam boards that don't accept private candidates or don't have a syllabus which an external candidate can be entered for. They put it in because whenever the only consensus that there's ever been about support is we want somewhere to sit exams. Never going to get that. Not even going to get information about where to sit exams, going to get information about the process of taking an exam. So, you know, if you weren't really paying attention, you're a peer and you're half asleep, it sounds like you've got something helpful about exams, but not really.
I've just had a question on the YouTube channel about, how long do people, how long do we think it will be before it comes into, this bill passes into, gets royal assent. So I'm just explaining that it's going into report stage next week in the House of Lords. And then I believe there's some kind of a ping pong between the two houses. Am I right? Where they kind of like refine it and, make changes again. Yeah.
It goes through both houses of parliament. It started in the Commons, it's been all the way through the Commons, it's nearly finished going through the Lords, then it goes backwards and forwards between the two, and then you have royal assent, which is likely to be around Easter this year. But once you have royal assent, it doesn't mean that all the measures that we're seeing now immediately come into force, because with all of our sections of children not in school, the only things that happen when the bill becomes an act of parliament is that regulation, they have powers to make regulations. So then they need to crack on and make those regulations, and that will take probably quite a long time, a year or so, I would say. And until they've made the regulations, they can't bring the law in, because the law doesn't exist in a vacuum. Just what's on, on the Act of Parliament, you need to know all the details of how it will operate in practice.
Exactly.
We haven't seen this before because we haven't had a brand new law on home education. So we're not used to seeing a new law being made from scratch and then all the infrastructure that you need for a new law. But that's what we'll be seeing. I was going to say waiting for, but that makes it sound like we want it. It will take some time after Easter, a year or so, before everything is in place. New regulations, brand new regulations, consultations on new guidance, scrutiny on various committees in Parliament and in Wales. So it'll be a while.
Yeah, and the thing is also we've got amendments put in by lots of people besides the government, and some of these, as lovely as they are, may not make it into the bill, which is rather sad, because some of them are very helpful. Because I like Lord Crisp, where he put in an amendment where he said a local authority must, in general and at the outset of any relationship with an individual family, act supportively towards home educating families. So he's trying to see a more positive relationship. And that he also suggested arrangements be made to enable children to take math and English exams for free, and that and then there's the Secretary of State's role. So that's like a really nice amendment, but because it's not come from a government minister, we don't know if that will survive the ping pong and so on.
I think I would assume that if it's not a government amendment, it won't go through. However, that may not be the point, because in the course of a debate about the amendment, there can be concessions extracted from the minister, which will be useful when the regulations are being drawn up,
Yeah.
and when the guidance is being drawn up, because you'll have something on the record.
Yes, yes, that's true. So I'm going to look at there's another amendment here from Baroness Smith, who represents government, which is a little bit of a positive one. I think she said here, this is clause 32, page 64, line 36. And I'm on page 63 of the document.
Oh, yes, we like this one.
Yes, 2A, a local authority in England must offer parents of children registered by the authority under section 436B the opportunity to attend a forum to discuss the operations of sections 436B to 436P. And then this offer must be made twice per year, and if it is accepted by at least one person to whom it is made, so if only one person says they want it, the local authority must arrange for the forum to take place. So this is fairly positive, because this means they're saying that they must offer. And this is an opportunity for parents to be able to discuss things with the local authority and maybe provide better working relationship. What do you guys think?
I think I don't know. I'm assuming that Michelle and I will both have a less rosy view, because we come from a special educational needs background where there's a lot of tokenistic engagement with families. But maybe I'm wrong, Michelle. Maybe you see it more favourably.
I think that's where it will probably end up, because, you know, as with the parent carer ones in the send bits, when they were very, very, very brand new, shiny, first set up, there was an effort made to have those conversations. As time goes on, the level of effort seems to become patchy depending on where you live. I think it's a good thing to have in there, because at the moment there is no mechanism to try and hold your local authority to account, to at least listen. Now, obviously, it will depend which local authority you're in, how well it works. There are some local authorities I can actually think, do you know what, this would be amazing, because the local authorities would then use it as a way to put stuff in to actually be helpful. There are other local authorities I'm thinking it will give the parents at least an opportunity to vent at the person, but we know the person's not going to listen. But at least you have the opportunity twice a year where you could, if they're particularly bad, get a big group of you together, and they can't say no, because as long as one of you said yes, you can all literally turn up in force and do the reverse bit. So I like it because it gives an accountability opportunity. And it's not that the local authority just provide it, it's that the local authority have to offer it, and if one of you says yes, then they have to put it on. So even if just every local authority, we just got one family to say yes, so they had to put it on whether they wanted to or not, it allows ways to make them notice we exist.
Yes, it's like a potentially collective communication channel. It's so and one would hope that it would be, kind of recorded.
Yeah.
Not like, camera recorded, but minuted, and then, something would happen from it, I would hope. But as I say, I think it sounds nice, but I'm not over optimistic.
Okay.
If we could have some things on record somewhere, when there's only anecdotes from one side that get taken as facts, there will be at least some tangible evidence to sort of wave about, which then could help us in the future. Because unfortunately, at the moment, nothing's written down anywhere. We could easily list which local authorities treat families in a certain way, but proving it becomes hard because there's no mechanism to have that formally recorded.
And I can imagine that, home educators who are we are very well networked and could share intelligence about these forums and could do some sort of like oversight and monitoring of the forums.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, we could run our own pilot scheme to see how well it works.
Yes.
And report on it after 2
Look at
years.
your critical friend.
Yes, after 2 years, we can do a report on how well it's worked. So that's up. I mean, I think that could be
we could
quite a good.
identify some models of good practice.
Exactly.
Potentially, it could be helpful. I'm
Yeah.
just jaded.
I understand the jadedness, believe me. But I think that might be an idea. It might actually be a constructive suggestion. I think to actually say, okay, if this passes into law and we're going to have these forums, we're going to run our own pilot study, which we will submit a report to the government after 2 years to say whether we think it worked or not, and all of that. So
Good practice, like ones where we think it works well, that others could adopt and so on.
Yes, exactly.
Helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then we also I just noticed there's like one bit that pertains specifically to Wales, which is basically the regulations made by the Welsh ministers would be subject to Senate approval. So that's just something for the Welsh side. Am I right?
It's the Welsh version of what they've also changed for England. So what they've changed for both countries is, instead of just making the very first set of regulations having to be like getting special scrutiny, they've changed it to say that every single time that any future government wants to change the regulations, there will have to be this additional level of scrutiny.
A lot of people were not very happy with the way Wales inserted themselves in without really going through the proper channels.
The fact that Wales just came in, just got shoved in at the right at the end of the Commons after all the scrutiny in the Commons.
Exactly. That was just before the Commons report stage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very bad. Yeah, just all the amendments quickly tabled and went through on the nod.
Similar to
but that's now, that's now a fact. So after the fact, it means that any changes to the bill, they have to say special different things about Wales, because Wales has devolved education. So
fair enough.
It's in the bill saying this is how it will specially apply in Wales.
Yeah, fair enough. I think they shouldn't have done what they did as it was, but anyway.
Apparently, the government asked them to, though.
Yeah.
Because they could do it themselves.
Yes, exactly. So the next one that I'm looking at is pertaining, do you know, when right in the beginning when we spoke about the Section 47 stuff in terms of deregistration, they've included that basically a preliminary notice for school attendance order could now be served on anyone that's had that involvement for the past 5 years.
Yes.
So it's like retroactively now. They want to catch up with anyone who had that involvement. It's a bit unfair, but.
So it's the same concept about not just current child protection plan, but child protection plan going back 5 years. So they have amendments to clause 31, which are about consent to home education in the first place. And then they have like parallel amendments to clause 33, which is about how school attendance orders will operate. So it's effectively it's saying the school attendance order process can be started if you're once the new law comes fully into force, and you're going to go on the register as a home educating family who've been home educating for however long. If there's been a child protection plan within the last 5 years, then the school attendance order process is started with, the requests to visit the home, etc., etc. Not necessarily that it will be completed, because the local authority might decide that you're fine. But if they're being overcautious.
Yeah, it's just a bit unfair on families who might have been happily home educating for the past 3 years with no issues.
Yes.
to suddenly
I
receive a
think
preliminary notice.
the fairness on the child who's got their whole network of friends within the community, that doesn't seem to be a consideration, even not even a consideration.
Well, I
I
think
know
there
they
is,
presume the LA are going to consider that in the best interest element, but
yes,
they also must refuse consent. It's not may refuse consent if they think it's in the best interest of the child to attend the school.
yeah, yeah. It's just the concern is always those local authorities that do not act in good faith. That's the concern, or may use it in a negative way, like like a stick to beat the parent with. That's where the issues for
And
me.
as we said at the beginning, just out of an abundance of caution, just by being really paranoid that something will happen on their watch and thinking, well, to be on the safe side, I don't want to have to stand up and defend my decision that I allowed this child to continue being home educated. It's much safer to get them back into school, or to get them into school in the first place.
Yeah.
It becomes somebody else's problem.
Yeah. Then just looking at clause 33, page 69, line 13, which is on page 65 of the document. So they're looking at, I'm not quite sure how this differs from the original. For the purpose of determining whether preliminary notice must or may be served under this section, the local authority must consider the settings where the child is being educated and the local authority knows about and where the child lives, and may request the child's parent on whom the preliminary notice would be served to allow the local authority to visit the child inside any of the homes in which the child lives. And if they refuse it, that's got to be considered. So, how did that differ from what we had already?
They've just brought that forwards. They had that just slightly
from
later
SAO stage to preliminary notice stage
in the school attendance sort of process, and now it's right at the beginning of at the preliminary notice stage.
Yeah. One of our commenters has said, and I think she's referring to our conversation about the previous amendment, the section 47, that one for the preliminary notice serving of. Basically saying that they've been home educated for over 8 years, but their son was badly affected by puberty. He's multi-diagnosed, and she had to contact outside agencies for support. So, what if that's the case? How is that going to impact that family when actually the parent is doing the right thing and seeking support for their child, but they could potentially be penalized if the child is placed under any kind of a section 47 thingy.
And in the case of children with disabilities, I'm aware of a number of cases where the child is put on a child protection plan, not because they're considered to be at any risk, but that's the way to get statutory services
support,
involved. So it is discriminatory, and it is really hard to like describe to non-specialists, because it's a technical argument to be making that, do you know what, a child protection plan might not be about child protection, or might not be about the parent. It just seems counterintuitive.
Well, the law has these like tiny boxes that actually don't allow room for, so they've got these different, within your section 47, you've got a wide range, but then they're acting as if it contains a tiny range of cases, but it's a whole spectrum, and it can't be defined that narrowly.
What we said last time the government tried to change the law on home education was that they were bringing in a whole category of children who were at risk of being at risk. And that's what it feels like now as well, where safeguarding equates to making sure every child is seen by somebody outside the family.
And it's not reasonable and proportionate, to be fair. It's not at all, and it's a heavy burden to place on local authorities too.
And it's not child-centered, but it's very risk averse.
Yes. I'm just trying to figure out what the next amendment is. I think, do you want to go to the one on the regulations? I'm not sure where that comes in.
I think that wasn't that to
Do you know where that one is, Michelle?
I think we discussed it, wasn't that just about it changing to the affirmative process?
Yeah, I don't know enough about that, but I don't want. So, um, how many others of these? How many of these are going to be things that we need to know about, or does anyone want to highlight any others, or have we covered most of the main ones?
I think we've covered them.
Yeah, we've covered the biggies.
The most concerning ones, yeah.
Yeah. And as I say, I think that so there are 5 days tabled at the moment for a report. There may be another one added. Our bit of the bill is in the middle, so I'm guessing it comes in the middle of the days, which, as I say, would make it January the 21st. Likely to be all done on one day, and then it will feel like it's all over, but it isn't, because then you still have to have third reading, and then you still have to have ping pong. I think but it is coming to the crunch now, so it is worth having conversations and writing to members of the House of Lords and MPs in the House of Commons, because it's going to go back to the Commons to identify the issues that we've talked about today, but also, once that debate has happened at report on the 21st of January or thereabouts, to go through that with a fine-tooth comb and to pick out any like seeming concessions or reassurances from the government, or any like highlight any good points that were made by members of the Lords, regardless of how they voted in the end, because they will vote. There will be a vote with the government, I think.
This feels like a good time to share that next Saturday, the 17th of January, we have an event which is a protest against this bill. And this is not just for home educators, this is for anyone who is concerned about this bill. And we notice that this is getting it's being shared a lot right now on different platforms, because this is really our last chance to do something big, to do something impactful. And Michelle is coordinating this rally in London next Saturday. And I am just really strongly urging people to get themselves there. We do need people there in their thousands to make impact, to not be dismissed. If only a handful of people turn up, it just looks like nobody's really bothered about the bill. And I'm asking people to just really carefully consider how you can be there. Even if you live a distance away, make a plan to get there. I will be going there. I will have a plan for my transport. I will have a backup plan if something goes wrong with my transport. I will dress warmly. I will make sure I've got my banner and my lunch. And I will look forward to seeing other home educators there, because it's so important that we come together. And actually, we have a lot of fun at these rallies. We are paying for a proper professional stage with sound equipment and everything to really do this properly and in an impactful way. But we need people to show up. Michelle has gone to all the effort to set it up, has spent countless number of hours organizing this, talking to the police and so on in London, all the people that organize it, to make it possible. And we need to really make our voices heard. We're not going to get many other opportunities at this point to do a mass protest, unless somebody else organizes it, because I think Michelle is tired.
I've got professional reasons why I have to step away.
Yeah.
Very, very, I technically should already have stepped away very, very shortly. So yeah, it's my last time when I can actually have capacity to do something on this scale.
Yes, and you've done a great job,
The other bit
Michelle.
is, remember, it works because although there is some horrendous stuff in these new amendments, we no longer have to report something every 15 days. They have been sticking to that. That stuck all the way through the House of Commons. It stuck through the start parts of the House of Lords. They have finally listened. Now, they haven't listened to everything, but we wouldn't have got that if we weren't making noise. And we have been consistently making noise. We wouldn't have had it. This already would have been in place a year ago, but for us all making noise, which meant they had to take time to think about things, because we have managed to get it pushed back significantly, because they had to consider things. So it is absolutely worth us doing plenty of noise, because the 17th of January beautifully fits during the House of Lords report stage.
Yes.
They start on the 14th, their second day is on the 19th. Now, if we can get proper media traction on the 17th, if we can get that weekend, bearing in mind they're sitting on the 19th, we can get that weekend with all the issues flagged of why this is going to cause more harm. If you look at the speakers, there's a lot of speakers with genuine lived experience of systemic abuse, that they've been subjected to the the systemic abuse that already exists. They already know the law should help and it's failed them, and know how this, as it's drafted, will fail more children and will harm more children, and can talk to that. If we can actually get those hearts and minds stories, if we can get those real stories into the ears as they go into report stage, we might get them to just listen a bit more. And if we can just chip any more of that rough edges off, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, and I think particularly in the light of these latest amendments.
Sorry, are we going to mention the fundraiser for?
Yes, we will, of course. So we are also, I will go and see if I can find the link. We are also fundraising for this protest because understandably it costs a lot of money. And it's Michelle has often taken the hit on some of the financial things previously. So we have set up a fundraiser. Let me just go find it. There we go, I think. Yeah. And you can go and find this. It's on the GoFundMe page. We really would like to get this to, it's on 2667 at the moment. We really would like to get 5,000 if we can, because that will cover things like merchandise to be handed out to passers-by, flyers to be printed. So it's paying for the stage, paying for the sound system, paying for the licensing. So if you are, particularly if you aren't able to be there, this is one way you can be there, is by making a financial contribution. So if you are able, please go and donate. Now, I will try and get the links under all of these lives, because this live is appearing in actually a number of places at the same time, so I can't possibly comment in everyone. But if you're watching, perhaps you can go and find the link and share it in the comments of where you are watching. But you know, you go and buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, it's nearly £5. Why don't you just send us your £5? If you were going to travel and then you can't travel, perhaps you can donate some of that cost to this fundraiser, because you know, we've raised so much money to support other communities and legal opinions. I know we can do this. I know we can do this. So please see what you can donate to help get us up to that 5,000 mark. So we're past halfway. If you can just help us get a little bit further, that we would be so thankful for that. So and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you there at the fundraiser, not the fundraiser, at the march that we have all fundraised for next Saturday. I will say, dress very warmly, come prepared for the weather. Don't let the weather be the thing that drives you home. Come prepared for the weather. Come prepared for train delays. Come prepared for you know, all the different things that traveling to London implies. Think it through. Maybe bring a group of friends together from your local group. You know, maybe come and represent your local group. And let's just really, it would be amazing if we could really get a huge crowd there next week. I'm really hopeful. And if you go onto the event page itself, if you can also click whether you're going, so Michelle can get an idea of numbers, because we have London police and so on, thinking that we're not
Yeah,
going to get many
I
people
had an
there. So,
interesting chat with them on Friday,
yeah,
because magically all of a sudden they think no one's going to turn up. But they
Yeah.
also then quoted that the protests were last year were Catherine Berbelsing, and Randall, and many people were there. Bearing in mind the speakers themselves was over
Michael
24 people.
Charles, yeah,
Oh yeah, Michael Charles was there as well. How could I forget Michael Charles turning up? Jen Hodges was there as well. Apparently, according to the official police record, when they checked it Friday, bearing in mind I've been talking to them for over a month, when they checked Friday, apparently we had less than 50 people turn up on that day. I did point out it was live streamed and there's plenty of photos and it made the newspapers, so we can categorically say there were more than 50. But yes, they all of a sudden decided Friday, and they're like, so you're not going to get. We don't think you're going to get numbers. Why would you need road closures and things like that? So it's like, so it's safe because we are expecting numbers.
and
So
children,
hopefully, yes. So if you just like show an interest, I know people don't necessarily want to say they're going. So if you just put interested, at least then when they look, they might realise that yes, we have worked out our numbers and planned it appropriately.
So I
Yes.
can't make it on the 17th, and so I like donated my travel costs. But what I would say, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's like huge fun to do these things, but actually I spoke at the rally in Wakefield, because I'm in Sheffield, so I went to my local one back in the summer, and you do just meet some great people. So it is, you meet people that you've only known off the internet, or people who
Exactly.
know you from the internet. And that's actually like, it's quite exciting. You do get a great feeling of solidarity.
Yes, it is.
You feel much less, alone.
Yes.
I think that that can't be overstated, really.
Exactly. And I was so encouraged because I went to the Birmingham one, and one of the mums came to me. She says, "Oh, you're Juliet." She says, "I'm here because of you, because you keep talking about it and you keep standing up." And I just thought I can also do that, and I can go be there. And that was an encouragement to me, and I do have a great time. I have a lovely time, and I really enjoy meeting all the families, and I will be helping with the stewarding as well. So
yes, last year Juliet quizzed my mother.
I did. I got to meet Michelle's mother and found out all about how naughty she was as a little girl. So
I'm saying as an introvert about not having a great time, going out, basically.
And I think
outside is not great.
But I think we have to understand, for some people it is very overwhelming, but maybe just consider that, yes, sometimes it's great to bring the whole family, but sometimes maybe somebody from the family who is able to cope. But we do understand that there are many issues why people can't attend. But
what would be good on the day if you can't is if you can, because you'll see, like on the BBC and on a lot of the new TVX and that, a lot of the news channels and a lot of the newspapers, they have a my story type bit. So if you can't attend, when we're sharing the bits, you contact the My Story and you say why you're not there, but here's a photo of those who are here, so that it gets picked up, because they will pick them up, but they rely on stories coming in. So if you can't physically attend, you can still do that, because stuff will be being live streamed, videos will be posted, photos will be posted. Capture them, send it with your story of like, I would have been there for these reasons. I couldn't attend for whatever reason, and to your local papers as well, so that we just get that noise, because that's what we need. We need the noise.
And the thing is, also another thing you can do if you can't attend is try and replace yourself with somebody else. So try and encourage somebody else to attend, or share it in your groups, because we are very dependent on other people sharing, because we find lately on social media a lot of these things don't get the traction. People don't hear about it. It used to be that a thing would be shared and it would just spread like wildfire. These days I want you to pay for the privilege. So please share in all your networks, it does not have to be home educators. It can be children, who are concerned about SEND reforms. If you're concerned about school fines and attendance, where they're so strict on attendance, all of these things, we need. It's protesting against the bill. This is about stop the bill. And we need a lot of people there. So if you can't get there, share it with others, encourage others as much as you can. Even say to them, look, I'll make the banner for you so that I know I'm represented. Whatever. Get creative, but help us to help you, because this bill will affect every single home educator in the country. You cannot ignore it.
Yeah. And the reason you can capture everyone else, it does change the state of play for academies. It does change the state of play for every child with the unique consistent identifier, which they have many times now made it quite clear they're planning on it being the NHS number. It does change the state of play in how the local safeguarding system works, because they're formally bringing education into the hold of how they share information, even though that isn't what the British Association of Social Workers feel is a good idea, even though that doesn't match up with Eileen Munro's opinions that she's given over the years, or Ray Jones's, like very senior in that. Even though these senior people have spoken out, they're not following what's been recommended. So this affects potentially every family, and definitely every child with a consistent identifier. So it affects home educators disproportionately, but it does also affect other families. So, flag that to them, because they just may not even realise.
Yeah, it's not a popular bill, is it? I mean, I do hyper focus on the children not in school bit, but there's been a lot of opposition to a lot of the rest of it as well.
Yeah, and they're simply not listening. And when they will say, oh, but we are listening, we've given all these free school meals or free breakfasts or whatever, free breakfast clubs. Those are actually just, what would you call them, red herrings, or something to distract you.
Well, the thing is interesting with these horrendous amendments, they've got a few new distractions. So I'm fully expecting. So we had the breakfast clubs earlier in the year. Now we've got the free school meal extension. So this bill, the amendments they've had, there's 3 new clauses being added in. And one of them is the extension of the universal credit bit, because at the moment, although you can get free school meals on universal credit, it's only if you're the really low threshold. So most people on universal credit are not actually eligible for free school meals. But they've added the extension as a new clause in this amendment. So they put in all the bad stuff, but then they put in some headliners. So I think we've all heard free breakfasts and school uniforms all year. So now we're going to have free school meals as the big headline, I think, going in to hide these bad amendments. So every time they do think, oh, it's very hard to argue about feeding people, which, it is quite hard to argue against feeding people. But that doesn't mean you then forget all your civil liberties.
Yeah, and some of the tactics we've seen in terms of the Department for Education and Bridget Phillipson and so on, we've seen some tactics where when they share something, they actually now limit who can comment on posts. So they're not actually allowing free discussion, democratic discussion of things in a forum where they could actually really go and listen to people and what they have to say. They really could. And, we just find that we are being silenced. And we're allowed to say what we want, but with a gag on, kind of thing. So these are some
quite
things
amused the other day. Bridget Phillipson's I couldn't comment, but the Department for Education I could literally put a poster for the protest. So the Department for Education, and they still hadn't taken it down when I looked this morning. So they're quite happily not censoring.
Kudos to them. Yeah.
Yep. They're allowing free speech, but then the actual ministers who should be listening, even on their posts saying about I'm listening to parents, are limiting.
But don't comment.
Who can actually comment?
Yeah. I've had some comments about the protest. So somebody's asked, are we doing bubbles? Of course, bubbles and balloons are always very welcome at these events. So feel free. Hopefully it won't be that cold that our bubbles freeze, but I believe they're very pretty when they do. So
be nice photos.
All a good teaching experience. And I think I do like to make the point that these protests, it's a real opportunity for children to see engaging, how we engage with politics in this country, and learn about activism, learn about how laws are made and that kind of thing. So do sort
Well,
of use that
Addison's going to be
opportunity.
speaking, and Addison was one of the people who had the idea for creating the Hidden Voices Speaks book at a protest. God, it's almost a year ago now, because that was March, wasn't it?
It was the
No,
first
I
one, I
think
think.
that was the one Amy led
Yeah,
on.
so that was the first one
back
we
in
had, I think.
March.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's almost a year ago now. That idea happened and was turned around in time for the next element. So it was turned around in 2 weeks. So it does. Ideas ideas happen there, and conversations happen, and friendships are
Yes,
made that you wouldn't have
networking.
made without it.
Yeah, networking, and it is really lovely just to meet the people you've been seeing on screens like this as well, on Facebook and so on. So
I still need to find a time when I actually make it to an event where Fiona is as well, because I have never met Fiona outside screens.
well,
So that's my next aim.
I have met Fiona because I run a conference for home educators every year in May, and we've had Fiona's come along a few times to come and talk about dealing with your local authority and so on. And so it's been really lovely to get to know her. And I've met you in person, Michelle, and quite a number of others, which is fantastic. We've really forged some relationships. But anyway, let's try and stay on topic, shall we? Yeah. Yeah. So, do any suggestions for banners? I think that in terms of the protest, if you look at what the amendments are saying, you can make your banners in protest to specific parts of the bill that you do not like.